Hey guys, this is Lily reporting from Rhode Island Comic Con in Providence. We are ComicsVerse sitting with Tim Jones, a self-syndicated artist and author of Sour Grapes. These awesome little guys over here. Can you tell us a little bit about your comic, Tim?
Yeah, Sour Grapes started around 2013, and it's just really exploded over the years, up to 17 newspapers in Rhode Island and southeastern Mass. But it's basically about Aesop is a miserable flying dog, and he just has to put up with the sour grapes in life and his friends and all the complaints and problems of the world that the characters live in. So it's become a part of my life. Aesop's become a part of me, and so that's the basics of it.
What inspired the characters in your comic?
I came up with Aesop first, a long time ago, and I wasn't really, to this day, I'm really not sure why I called him Aesop, but he's just used to not fly, but when I created Sour Grapes, he flies now. There really isn't a reason for that either, but you know, like I said, it's just become a big part of my life, and I'm just really focused on this comic strip to bring it into more newspapers and hopefully someday be nationally syndicated. When I write a strip, I might have an experience that day. I might hear somebody say something, and then what I do is I just throw it at the characters. I throw it at Aesop and just see what they do with it. So
it sounds really cool. Maybe we'll get in New York City someday. We'll be able to read it every day. That'd be pretty cool. Can you tell us a little bit about your history with comics and I guess what inspired you to become an artist and a cartoonist?
Well, I've always read comic books since I was a kid, and Iron Man's my favorite and that, and I've always just kind of doodled around. I finally went, in high school, I took art all 4 years, and it was just something that was a part of me. When I got into college, I did go in for art, and I really wasn't sure back then. I always had doing a comic strip in the back of my mind, but then one day I just decided to sit down and do a comic strip, and I actually had started with this one, Every Blue Moon. And this is where it all started. You can see Aesop, and the characters look a lot different. Aesop didn't fly back then. And so I started with this, and it's important to be able to develop your comic strips and explain what it's about, relationships to the characters, and I couldn't do it with this because it was such a vague subject. So I put this away, and I kind of put it to bed. I did a couple other short ideas, and then I just started thinking about Sour Grapes, and that name's always rung in my head, even when I was doing that. So as soon as I came up with Sour Grapes, the name, it was so easy to write because I knew what it was about, the story of my life, and but it's just over the years, I've always liked to draw and stuff, but I just decided just to do a comic strip, and then that was it.
Your comic strip, is it set in Rhode Island? Is it set in an office setting? How does it speak to your public?
Sour Grapes is in its own world, and it's a world of problems, it's a world of complaints, especially with these characters. There's always something going on, but it's relatable because, like I said, I find experiences in my own life, things I hear, and I just kind of keep it in my mind and I bring it down. But it's not set in any one, like you say, Rhode Island or an office like Dilbert, or it's not political. I never bring politics into this, especially nowadays. But so it's contained in its own world, but it's relatable to a lot of people. So that's one of the keys for a comic strip. Give it its own world. As far as I'm concerned, give it its own world, but it's got to appeal to a broad audience, and I think this does. So
I like it. It made me laugh. You said you were a self-syndicated artist. Can you talk a little bit about that process and how you pitched your strip to publications in order to get it kind of?
It's like, when I had Every Blue Moon, 15 years ago, I was in some newspapers with that. So I knew when I started this, knowing that this was a lot better, that I was able to just go approach the newspapers. And lo and behold, I live in Smithfield, Rhode Island, and there was a new couple of new newspapers in the area. Contacted the publisher. One of them is the Smithfield Times, and he really liked it, and he gave me my start. And so that was the first one. And I was like, okay, let me see if I can get into a couple other ones. So I started researching what, other sections of Rhode Island so I could spread myself around. So I called the editors, and I never emailed them because I want the personal approach. So I call him. He's not available right now. I'd call again. He's not available. So I would just keep going and going and going. Finally, I get a hold of this guy. And it almost happened the same way with every paper. Get a hold. Can you call me in a week? Can you call me in 2 weeks? Like, okay. So I did. And a lot of them respect the persistence and the tenacity of it. And so what started happening was I started getting into more papers, and say I'd call another one, and I tell them, okay, like last year at this time, I was in 6 newspapers at Rhode Island Comic Con. So these people, it's easier to call a newspaper and say, okay, I'm in 6 newspapers. So now they hear that you're a little successful. So as I called newspapers, I got into more newspapers. So when I called, say, hey, listen, I'm in 15 newspapers now. So they want to hop on the train, And the local newspapers, they're not rinky-dink ones by any means, but they're actually giving up an ad space for me. Instead of getting someone to pay for that space, they give it to me. So I must be doing something right. So now I give the pitch, say, hey, listen, now I'm in 17 newspapers. Since last year I was in 6. It's really exploded. It's really popular. Would you like me to send some samples? And it's been always, yeah. So you just got to, it's a luck of the draw, I think, sometimes. So.
Right, and I'm sure you maybe start small, local, and then expand out to much larger publications and news outlets.
Yep. Yeah, as a matter of fact, one of them that I'm in is Motif Magazine. I'm in there twice a month. I'm in weeklies, which is fine because I have a full-time job that has absolutely nothing to do with art, 0. So that's, and I have a family in that, so once a week right now is good. I mean, I'm always drawing and stuff, but because I have a lot of deadlines now.
Are the comics that you print the same every week across the board, or do you do different strips for different papers based on what the need is?
Good question. The newer papers that I'm in are getting ones that have already printed in the other papers. Some of the papers take me in color, some of them take me in black and white. So I have ones that have run in color that haven't reached them yet, and black and white is, but they all catch up at some point. So right now it's kind of a catch up.
And then the story across the board is usually.
Yes. Yeah. It depends on what paper I'm sending it to, but I'll have a black and white. Where is it? I just drew this one. Whoops. I just drew this one. Everybody can see it before it comes out. And it's basically based on Comic-Con. And Aesop communicates with snowmen sometimes. And so this one, I decided to draw Burl Ives from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. But that's his costume for Comic-Con. So Aesop's like, what the hell's that? That's for Comic-Con. And basically, he says, well, I have a little silver and gold. And he shows up with BB-8. And that's okay. So Aesop's like, okay, that'll do it. So
you heard it at Rhode Island Comic Con exclusive.
But what I'm getting at is it's like, this is deadline starting on Tuesday. So some people, this particular paper will print on Thursday. And then Wednesday night, I send out to 2 newspapers, so they'll get this one all in black and white. And then I have my colors that I have to send out to those papers on Thursday night, but they'll get either this one in color or another one that I've done. So it's all different. Yeah.
Have you thought about exploring comic books, the genre of comic books, different maybe like books that are published at?
So they're actually collections of my comic strip. That's my first one. That's my second one. That's the latest one. And
The Daily Doldrums Sour Grapes.
I am currently working on a coloring book for kids because I have so many kids coming. Oh, he's so cute, Aesop. So I'm starting to reach a wide audience of ages, So I decided, okay, you know what? I'm going to do a coloring book and see how that goes, and then another one of those will come out. But as far as comic book goes, I thought about putting Aesop in like an adventure. So that is on the back burner right now. That'll probably happen as well. But I'm very, very focused on sour grapes. A lot of people say, can you do this? Can you do that? And I just like, I gotta focus on this until it's where I want it to be. So
I think any successful individual, artist, business person at all would almost always say stick to what you're passionate about and stick to your thing. If that's your thing and you found your thing, stick to it. And that's a lot of advice I've gotten a lot of the time too, and it seems to have worked for you quite well.
I hope so. I hope it keeps going in that direction too.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell the public about Sour Grapes, where they can find it?
They can find it online. I'm on Facebook, facebook.com/sourgrapescomic. That'll bring you right to my fan page. There's also my website, www.sourgrapescomic.com, so you can see everything there. I have to update it. But so you can see all the comics there. I have an Etsy store. You can buy all this stuff if you want, the books, the shirts, everything. And you can see all my events there and stuff. So in that sense, people can see me across the country, But I've got my submissions out to some of the major syndicates, and I'm hoping on those. It's not easy. I have gotten a rejection letter so far, but Jim Davis of Garfield took him 7 years to get into. Charles Schultz got turned down a bunch of times, so it takes time, but I think with its popularity and its bulk of newspapers that it's in, that'll help out a lot. So
that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tim, for meeting with us. It's been a pleasure. We hope to see you maybe at some other cons, some more regional cons, New York Comic Con, maybe one day if we get you at the New York Times. Look out for Tim's awesome comic strip, Sour Grapes, also available at sourgrapes.com. I'm Lily, reporting from Rhode Island Comic Con. Check us out at comicsverse.com, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.